Today's episode of NuggetCast is produced and sponsored by CBT Nuggets. Watch, learn, conquer. Today on NuggetCast, we'll attempt to keep strange content off your network with Checkpoint. Wow, people do send some strange content through their networks. Well, welcome to NuggetCast, your source for getting the most out of your IT, project management, office productivity, computer-based training. I'm your host, Steve Barth, and it's finally December. It's holiday time. That means all of us can start looking at all the cool tech gifts that we might want to include on our Christmas list.
I was thinking, on the band we had
And for many people, December brought the end of No Shave November, which here at CBT Nuggets led to a new national holiday we like to call December 1st Really Funky Beard Day.
A little devil, do ya? I could do something.
But we're not here to discuss the holidays. Today we're exploring Checkpoint. Checkpoint is an internet security company that's been around for the last 20 years that provides a number of solutions that can help keep your data and networks safe and secure from all sorts of strange content that might be trying to get in. But because some of the products that Checkpoint sells might sound confusing as to what they are and how they benefit you, let's turn to the whiteboard for trainer Keith Barker as he explains what Checkpoint is and why it's so vital for your network.
What exactly is Checkpoint? My friend, you've come to the right place. The other day, a friend asked me, "Hey Keith, what exactly is Checkpoint?" I thought to myself, that would be a great topic for a micronugget. So let's start with this question. What's the purpose of a network? And the answer to that is so we can share resources or get resources beyond ourselves. For example, let's say we have Bob, who's a happy user. You know why he's so happy? It's because he's sitting at this computer and he has access to the internet. Internet access and sharing resources is typically done in a client-server model. So Bob is acting as a client and he's making a request out to a web server, and that web server replies back to him. Now I'd like you to notice something about this diagram. I've got this PC way over here and I've got the internet way over here. Why is it that we didn't put the PC directly on the internet itself? And the answer is simple. It's because the internet is a dangerous place. This computer, if it's connected directly to the internet, would be scanned in less than 60 seconds. And oftentimes, without the correct patches or updates installed on that PC, it would be compromised in under a minute. So the solution to that is we put some type of a protection between the PC and the internet, and that usually comes in the form of some type of gateway or firewall. And the most typical implementation of this gateway is going to be something called a stateful filtering firewall. If Bob, right here, is going out to a web server, the firewall remembers it. It says, oh, it's coming from Bob's computer, it's going out. And then the reply traffic, if it's coming back and it's the appropriate reply traffic coming back to Bob, the firewall dynamically allows it in. And here's the cool trick with stateful filtering. Let's say we have a hacker out here, and that hacker is trying to initiate a connection inbound. The firewall is going to say, oh, no, you can't come in. I'm not allowing that inbound traffic. So we can compare this firewall to a checkpoint on a road. So it stops all the cars and verifies whether or not they're allowed to pass. Now there's lots of companies that manufacture appliances and firewalls that provide this stateful filtering. Among them include Juniper, Cisco Systems, and a company called Checkpoint. And the full name of the company is Checkpoint Software Technologies Limited. But we affectionately refer to them as Checkpoint. And they've been around for a long time. This is not their first rodeo. They've been around for over 20 years. In fact, they have some of the original patent technologies on stateful filtering. So for starters, we could say that Checkpoint is a security technology company, and one of their products is a gateway/firewall product that can allow for stateful filtering. Our next challenge is this. Even though the stateful filtering firewall can stop the initial traffic flow from a hacker or from some other device that was trying to get traffic into our network, users, like our good friend Bob right here, can cause their own problems. For example, Bob could be visiting this website. He's going out to a web server and he's pulling down some files. So the stateful filtering says, oh, he went out to that server with these ports involved. The reply traffic came back, so the firewall lets it in. But what Bob could be downloading could be malware. And there's thousands of varieties of malware that Bob could be downloading and running on his computer. He could be downloading virus-infested files. Bob could be going to unauthorized sites. For example, in a corporate environment, there's definitely websites or categories of websites that are not authorized to be visited. And Bob also might be using unauthorized applications. For example, maybe our company policy says Facebook is absolutely fine. You can go to Facebook. Social networking is very popular. However, there could be certain types of applications within Facebook that we don't want to allow to run on Bob's computer. And with just the basics of stateful filtering, we're not really preventing any of this. Now here's the great thing about Checkpoint Technologies is that if we're using their gateway, we can tell the gateway we want to take this game to a whole nother level. For example, if we're concerned about malware, we can use the threat emulator feature from Checkpoint, and the firewall, the gateway, can actually assist us in stopping that traffic before it makes it back to Bob's computer so that it doesn't have a chance to reach Bob and run on his computer. The same is true for virus. We can have antivirus services running on the gateway so that when the gateway is receiving that reply traffic from the server that's trying to go back to Bob, we can identify it and stop it before it harms Bob's computer. For unauthorized sites, we can go ahead and enable the feature called URL filtering. It says, hey, these categories of sites are not allowed to be visited by Bob or anybody else. And with a really nice feature called identity awareness, we can now have a history of what attempts were made. So we'll know it was not just an IP address that tried to go to a website. We'll also know that it was Bob who was behind that IP address as it tried to go to that website. So we blocked it, logged it, and we have a great tracking of what exactly happened on our network. And for unauthorized apps that are trying to be run from the web, we have application control. A lot of our traffic on the internet today is being encapsulated inside of TCP with the well-known server port of 80. However, the actual payload, like what's in the trunk of those packets, could be virtually anything. And with application control, this gateway can take a detailed look to see exactly what's there, and then based on the rules that we have set up for that gateway to follow, the gateway can then enforce the policy. And if the policy says do not allow this traffic, the gateway can stop it right here at this point in the network, which will stop that traffic right in its tracks. Another thing that I really love about Checkpoint Technologies is that it's very cohesive and it's very integrated. All the pieces fit together. For example, let's say that you and I are in charge of the entire company, and we decide together that we want to implement some firewall services. We also want to do some identity awareness, maybe some intrusion prevention system, maybe a little URL filtering, some data loss prevention, etc., etc. What you and I would do is we would sit at a PC and we would create this policy of what we want to implement. And so the administrators sitting at this PC are sort of like the Pentagon. And I do realize this is a US-based analogy, but there are similar structures in virtually every government. So as administrators, we're like the Pentagon deciding on what we're going to go ahead and do. Now the Pentagon doesn't send direct orders to the actual soldiers to say, make sure this happens. I need URL filtering, IPS, identity management, firewall services. There's a chain of command, and the same is true with Checkpoint. The Pentagon is going to get that information to their generals. And in a Checkpoint deployment, those generals are called security management servers. So all of the instructions regarding policy, what features we want, how we want it implemented, are going to be given to this security management server, just like the Pentagon would pass on their objectives to the generals. Now, at some point, we need to get those instructions, the rules, to the actual soldiers who are going to be carrying out the work. So in this analogy, the generals would relay that information through the appropriate chain of command to the soldiers. And those soldiers in our topology are the actual gateways that are enforcing the rules. And here's the beauty of this. If we have 200 or 300 gateways, we might have several generals in charge of those. And the great thing is, in Checkpoint, we have this architecture. They call it the Security Management Architecture, or SMART for short, where we can sit at a single computer, and as logging and other events come up, the soldiers are going to feed that information back to the security management server, just like the soldiers would feed that information through the proper chains of commands up to the generals, and then the generals can feed that back to the Pentagon. The same process happens with Checkpoint. The foot soldiers, the gateways, send updates and notifications about what's happening on the network to the security management server or servers, and those servers can make that information available back to us as the administrators from a single computer that we're sitting at. So we have enterprise management from a single computer screen. Checkpoint also has endpoint security solutions that can be installed on computers as well. The operating system that runs on the security manager and the gateway is called Gaia. And for individuals who want to implement a Checkpoint solution, they've got lots of options. You can purchase an appliance from Checkpoint that has Gaia already installed, or you can use an open server, and they've got a list of what hardware is required. You can install Gaia and then simply use the license features from Checkpoint that you want to use on that device. And of course, there's also several flavors and versions that we can use in a virtualized environment. So regarding the answer to the question, what exactly is Checkpoint? We could have said, oh, Checkpoint is a gateway/firewall product, but that's a lot like calling the Taj Mahal a building. It doesn't even begin to address all of the features that are available inside of a Checkpoint solution. And the whole goal of Checkpoint, their vision, if you will, is one single thing, and that is to make the internet secure, or at least secure for those individuals who choose to implement a Checkpoint solution.
So, there's a quick glance at Checkpoint and the kinds of things it can offer you. But as always, we like to peek just a little bit deeper than the basics. So today, let's talk to Keith Barker in a trainer chat to see what else we can learn about Checkpoint and its many benefits. So good morning, Keith. Welcome to NuggetCast. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Yeah, no problem. Now, today we've been talking about Checkpoint. We just finished watching a micro nugget that you created, which really explains the basic of Checkpoint. So, in your own words, now that I have you one-on-one, can you tell us how it works?
All right, so Checkpoint is a company. First of all, they make a bunch of firewall products or security-related products. So the basic process is this. We as administrators or the senior management decides what policy should be in place. We create that policy on something called a security management server, and then the security management server pushes that policy out to the gateways, which are like the soldiers who implement that policy. So whether you're a small company or a huge organization, you can create the policy in one place and have it logically pushed out to where it needs to go. So that's the overall concept from a broad perspective of what Checkpoint does. It implements security policy in the places it needs to be.
Okay, awesome. So now, users can cause a lot of problems for themselves, at least as far as like malware and viruses and that kind of thing. How do you eliminate those risks?
That's an easy one. All we're going to do is simply just get rid of all the users, and then we're not going to have any challenges with those problems they bring in. However, the reality is that networks are there because users need them. And so the challenge is this. We give users like you and I access to go to the internet. It's great. We go to the internet and we download a file. Maybe it's a PDF. There's nothing wrong with downloading a PDF unless it's infected with content that's going to harm our computer. So one of the cool features that Checkpoint adds to the mix is additional what they call software blades. They're really feature sets that we can license. One of those, for example, is the ability to do intrusion prevention systems to identify attacks against the network. We can also identify viruses, malware, right at the gateway. So, for example, here's the server. Make sure I'm on the screen. Here's the server, here's the client. Client goes out to the server, requests some files, they come back, and the gateway, who's enforcing the policy, can look at that content and say, whoa, stop the truck, this is going to harm you, and stop it right there before it ever reaches Bob's machine. So end user training is really important, but a checkpoint system can also assist an environment in helping the user protect themselves by not letting that content actually reach the actual end user machine, like Bob's computer.
Then there's a lot of details, there's a lot of rules that have to be in place in order for systems to be in compliance with things like SOX and HIPAA, PCI, for those that know what those are. How in the world does Checkpoint handle all of those requirements?
That's one of the cool feature of Checkpoint, because there's a lot of regulations. If you're holding, for example, medical documents and medical records of people, you have to be in compliance. You can't just say, well, I hope we're okay. So what Checkpoint has is they have a compliance blade, another feature that you can add in. And this feature, now when we talk about blades, it's simply software licensing that enables it. So you're not like plugging additional hardware modules in every day. You're simply enabling features. And with those features, it can go through your entire enterprise. Let's say we have, 200 or 300 gateways enforcing policy. It can give us a snapshot, one pane of glass view saying, hey, here's your compliance issues. Regarding HIPAA, you want to check these 42 things. And regarding SOX, you want to check these 42 things or 28 things. And it can give you kind of a radar of how you're doing, best practices, where you should look into. Now, in the final analysis, we have to have some inspection of the network to find out if we are compliant. But most networks really only find that out when they get audited to determine how compliant they are. This way, we can really implement the compliance blade, and you can actually implement that policy on purpose ahead of time, so you're actually in compliance or going in that direction instead of just hoping that you're compliant. Most vendors, I'm really shocked, most vendors of firewall products do not have a compliance feature built in that can assist you like this does. It really makes it stand out.
So then, how does the network know which users are sending which packets through the network? That's still confusing to me.
That is such a great, it's a great problem, and there's a great solution, because let's say back in the 80s and 90s when local area networks first started up, we were just happy to have packets flowing through the networks. But today, for example, we have Bob who's going out to a website. We want to make sure that if he's going out to a website, it's an authorized website, so we can have URL filtering and everything else built in. But the question you ask is, how do we know it's Bob, right? Mm-hmm. The answer to that is identity awareness in Checkpoint. And there's a couple of different ways of doing it in Checkpoint to match your needs. But a lot of companies are running Active Directory. And so the sneaky thing is, it's not sneaky, it's really cool, is that Active Directory knows when a user logs on. Let's say Bob logs into a machine. When he logs on, there's a security record or security event that's created to say, hey, Bob logged on, it was this time, here's the IP address he's associated with. We can have the Checkpoint system hook into that information and then associate that IP address with Bob. So we can make policies say, okay, Bob or this group that Bob's a member of is allowed to go to these sites or those sites, or is allowed to download this type of content if he's a member of that group. So two things come out of that. One is we have really sweet policy enforcement based on not just an IP address, but who that user is. And the second thing is we have fantastic accountability, because later we can go back to the account records and say, hey, check this out. Bob was trying to go, through this, or he was trying to go to that URL and got denied. And for troubleshooting, it's also helpful as well, because the actual accountability of knowing what happened after the fact in an enterprise network is so critical, and a lot of times it's an afterthought. It's like, okay, let's build the security first and just kind of hope we can dig out from the log files the details later. Checkpoint is really, really integrated super well for the entire process, from identifying a user to the logging and the collection and viewing of that data when you need it.
So now, the whole point of today's NuggetCast is to really
Yeah.
give people a good overview of Checkpoint. So what stands out in your mind as the guy that created our Checkpoint training? What is it that really stands out in your mind about Checkpoint that just makes it awesome?
I would say that everything is purpose-built, and it was thought ahead of time. What I've seen in the last 27 years of working with networks is that we have little things that are added on. We'll add on this, we'll add on that. And Checkpoint, I know they didn't do it, like with a big vision at the beginning, but everything they create or purchase or integrate, it's all, it gels together very well. For example, if you have the compliance blade, the data loss prevention blade, the URL filtering, and so forth, intrusion prevention, all of that is integrated into some awesome data collection as far as user reporting. So for example, let's say that you're interested, I wonder how many times Bob has gone to this type of, or has tried to download this type of content, or has run this type of application, for example. In just a few seconds, the system can take the information from all of those security blades, the software features, bring it to one pane of glass and say, boom, here's what Bob did, boom, 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 boom. In most environments, especially with separate intrusion prevention systems, with separate antivirus systems, with separate email scanning systems, getting all of that information at your fingertips right then is virtually impossible, and it's not a really happy sight. So I say that really stands out as an amazing feature with Checkpoint. They've also been around for 20 years. It's not like they were just built, yesterday.
Right.
They are a security company, and their vision is to keep the internet secure, at least for customers who implement a Checkpoint solution. I'm thoroughly impressed with how well they've put together a comprehensive system from endpoints to network security, from intrusion prevention. They've done a fantastic job.
Now that you know the basics of Checkpoint, let's learn some more. CBT Nuggets is proud to offer Checkpoint training from Keith Barker. Keith's latest Checkpoint training course aims to help students learn how to configure and manage a Checkpoint deployment. During the 19-video course, Keith also shares tips for the Checkpoint Certified Security Administrator Certification exam. So let's wrap things up there. There's a lot to Checkpoint, so watch some of the CBT Nuggets trainings to get a sense of what it's like. Remember, even if you're not a subscriber, the first 2 minutes of each training video can be watched for free. So go get a sneak peek. Remember to send all of your ideas for future episodes or comments and questions about the show to cbtpodcast@cbtnuggets.com. The show is available for you to subscribe to in iTunes, and we'd love more people to learn about our show, and the more comments we get, the more our show will be promoted. You can also watch our previous episodes on the CBT Nuggets YouTube channel or the CBT Nuggets blog, as well as finding all sorts of cool tech content and news. And with that, remember, the stuff trying to get through your network can be scary, scary stuff. So find some way to protect it. And maybe Checkpoint is that perfect solution. Or at least hire a better security guard. Nice. Okay, then storm off.